everybody. Wandering into the mystic this week, sandwiched between two eclipses, kind of in an unknown and confusing space. But that's the goal of this CIRF report, is to get you some awareness about what to expect energetically, and by all means to get you some solutions, some ideas about how best to behave in this confusing time. So let's go surfing. Who's ready? All right. I'd like to do this live chart just to give you an idea of what I might be accidentally projecting as I do this report. I'm a little bit late because of an insurance adjuster. This is the only time to come deal with my stolen goods was now, or just a minute ago. I'm at 11:19 a.m. Central Daylight Savings Time, April 26th, with a T-square on positive optimistic Jupiter and the moon hovering over Mars. Moon rising right now, but it's cloudy, so we won't be able to see her a little bit later. All right, here's our summary slide for the influence. We're going to do a summary slide for the solution later. That solution is, I think, the most important aspect of these reports, but that's just me. I want to know practically what I need to remember to do. But it's also important to know what to expect us and other people to feel, because that will determine how they then react. In other words, you'll know how people are behaving. Now, you won't be able to be very precise because we have this thing called free will, but you'll know what they're feeling. And if you know what they're feeling, that's halfway to knowing how they're going to react, how they're going to behave. All right. So April 27th through May 4th, we have Tropical Astrology. Like I mentioned, we're kind of sandwiched between two eclipses. It's the week in between. So it's kind of it's kind of a pressurized lull system or lull area in the energies, with a lot of conflicting energies going on. And we'll go through those day by day, but just to give you a brief kind of overview, you got the sun in Taurus, you got the Mercury retrograde. We have Pluto station in retrograde here pretty soon and during this CIRF week. We have some challenging aspects on Jupiter, some challenging aspects on Venus. And so that puts us in kind of a worth focus, a high focus on seeking worth, seeking value, especially with the sun in Taurus. But then it's kind of getting confusing in the sense that we're kind of wandering. That's the I-Ching. The I-Ching says wanderer. And I think it has a lot to do with trying to figure things out. And that's a Mercury retrograde in Taurus combust. I know that's a lot. I'll explain all that to you. The Mercury retrograde is headed towards the sun, is within a conjunction, and they're at the same inclination, or they will be as they pass, and hence will be a true Cazimi. And at that time, it won't be confusing. It'll be enlightening. It'll be a burst of knowledge about the way the world works. There's no better world works sign than Taurus, because it's a material world. It's how the 3D reality, how that engine works. So that's happening. That Cazimi is happening in Taurus this week. So that will be an enlightening period, about 12 hours or so, about a half a day. And we'll talk about that. But the Wanderer, the I-Ching, is talking mostly about these hard aspects to Jupiter. Jupiter is the wisdom, optimism. And of course, Mercury combust is most of this week. So we're wandering in more of like a mental space. And then the Dreambot has, again, a high focus on timing. And I believe this has a lot to do with our eclipses on both sides. But also in Taurus, we have the future. is bound in Taurus. So Taurus holds the future right now, with the Uranus and the North Node on bracketing all the planets that are in Taurus. So it's a very future oriented. People are kind of on pins and needles saying, well, what's going to be happening? And we're wandering into that space. So that's why it's called Wandering into the Mystic. The song for this week is Van Morrison, Into the Mystic. And you'll see I'm going to put it all together. The first way station in this Onto the Mystic is just mind and chewing, the Taurus kind of chewing over things. And as we try to figure things out, wandering into confusion but once we get to the solution, you're going to start to see that in that figuring it out and in that Mercury Cazimi, you're going to get some higher mind, some mystical mind, some divine mental space. So that's why we're into the mystic. All right, you ready? Is that good enough? Let's go. All right, and another lull is our new subscribers. It is growing, however, kind of in a kind of quiet space. So please continue to share and talk about these reports if they mean a lot to you. We can help other people by bringing them into our tribe. I love our CIRF tribe. All right, so before we get started on the astrology, I think it's probably good to not forget about the DreamBot. Had some more weird things with the DreamBot, so I had to do some more troubleshooting, got it back up to health. But it's weird how roommate stays in the DreamBot, the word Dutch, and the word woke stays and actually increases in our DreamBot. This one interesting, how the word non is right next to woke. So non-woke. Weird. All right. So the way that I have this set up is timing. These are undeniable timing type of words referring to time, and the word timing. And these are the blue arrows. So all the blue arrows are about time. And I believe that has a lot to do with the eclipses and the future orientation in Taurus. And then tiny little memes is how much, whole, fragment, and half. And then we have acquaintances in the green arrows, but close acquaintances, not just like friends. It's closer than friends. So we're like roommate, grandma, these people that are really important to us, are probably more important than just your standard friend. So close acquaintances. So I think that's a lot of Venus in there. And we will look at her aspects as well. Whoops. Sorry. Let's get reestablished here. All right. We're in the last few days of April. And Sun in Taurus, as you can see. I do need to put my highlighter on. I'll do that now. All right. So we have a few aspects here. We're going to cover all these in our day-to-day, but I wanted to get into May because May is big. A lot of energetic shifts. The first one, big one, is, I want to say Pluto happens this week. Pluto retrograde, one of those really subtle things. It's going to be hard for a lot of us to feel that directly. You're probably going to see that bubbling out into the reality another way in terms of power, more than likely. But the big thing is the full moon. It's a lunar eclipse in Virgo, and that's on the 5th. We'll talk briefly about that this CIRF report, but it's mainly for the next CIRF report. And then we have the new moon in Taurus on the 19th. We have Mercury and Saturn in an opportunistic sextile And because Mercury is initially retrograde, that sextile will actually perfect twice. It's a sextile, so 45 degrees, no, 60 degrees. Yeah, 60. All right. And then we have the big news this week is going to be the Mercury Cazimi. And when Mercury and Sun are outside of 17 minutes, so very, very close, that's called Mercury combust. So as Mercury gets closer and closer to the Sun, it gets weaker and brightened out, shined out. It's harder to think. It's cloudier. This is kind of that mystic. Now, notice that Sun and Mercury are parallel right there at the time of the Cazimi, at the time of the passing, which makes it a Cazimi in both azimuth and inclination. So we're in a pure Cazimi. And so in that case, Mercury is extra strong. And so we've got like a supermind opportunity that we will cover this report. One thing to note, Mercury square Pluto, you can see that square here. It never perfects. And in some astrological theories, if it doesn't perfect, it's not worth talking about. It won't hold any weight whatsoever. I don't know if I believe that. Do you guys believe that? Do you guys have evidence of that? Let me know in the comments. All right, so a little bit of overview. As you can see, this is Thursday, the 27th, right around noon in Central Time Zone in America. We have Sun in Taurus in a T-square, the moon, and a first quarter moon in Leo, and Pluto. Excuse me. So a lot of things to note here. We have a conjunction with the Sun is over the North Node, so ego is really paying attention to or concerned about the future or being shown your material future right now, and maybe even trapped in it. Might even be fearing it a little bit because it's a T-square, energetic pressure to do something. It might be urges, might be plans, goals, but very practical, Taurus. Also, we have Mercury that has just gone retrograde and is still conjunct with Uranus. And Uranus is also future-oriented and insightful. So we have still reflecting on the past, that's Mercury, reflecting on the past with how that's going to affect the future. Uranus. We also have change. We can change. If we have a past orientation, Mercury retrograde, then we can put that as insightful into the future and know how to change it. So there's a lot of opportunities there, but energetically speaking, it does feel pressure and tense. There is a growing square with the slower planets, Jupiter square Pluto, that we've been talking about. This is going to get stronger, and we'll talk about that here in a second. But first quarter moon in Leo is a direct match to the overall context of all the energies. It is a forward movement. Taurus is forward. It's a strong, heavy forward, but it's slow, methodical, very deliberate. And that is perfect. It's perfect tempering for this Leo moon. It's first quarter. Want to set your hair on fire maybe and go full on very quickly, impulsively. And we don't want to be doing that in accordance with the first quarter. Now, once we get past this, that's the time to really start pushing harder on the accelerator. But for now, it is commensurate and overlaps nicely with the Taurus energy. Friday, the 28th, we have 5 square energies, 90 degrees, and it's tense. It's tenses up, a lot of pressure. Emotions are such that they're very motivating. Some with the Leo to the material Taurus squares are maybe anger, maybe impatience, those kinds of pressures to get stuff done. And keep in mind that we've got both of our power centers in our body, inner power, outer power, Mars and Pluto, are in states of fall, meaning that it's just things are harder. It's harder to get things done in the material outside world, and your behaviors are harder to get things done. And Pluto, it's harder to get in there and tap into the subconscious to orchestrate and find your intuitive power, your inside power. It's just a little more distant, harder to find. On Saturday, the 29th, we've got a couple of squares now developing on Jupiter. Now, it's pretty early, but this is a big energy for the rest of this week. It'll be one of the many big energies. And you might be a little bit trapped here. And because Jupiter is very optimistic, but it also can be excessive. So now when you got two weak centers, both of the squares are on those centers that we just talked about, the power, the yang planets, but it's harder. And so with excessive Jupiter and overly optimistic sometimes, we can now sign up for more than we can actually do. That's a real possibility. You might even be pressured to do it. Some of you might be thinking along the lines of getting a second job or a third job because you can do it. You have to do it. That's the Jupiter excessiveness here. And it's also the remaining warrior. Don't forget that this period of time, this next 6 months, is the Aries new moon eclipse. So this time is owned and ruled by Aries, and it's all about bringing out your inner warrior. So that's underneath it all, and Jupiter's still in Aries. And so, signing up for more kind of goes along with that inner warrior. Sunday, the 30th. Now, this one's interesting. Once we get into the Rave Mandala, you're going to see this is the point at 10:31 p.m. Central Daylight Savings Time, April 30th. Jupiter is shifting from one rave to the next. And, well, I can't even remember the gate now. I thought I'd be able to remember it, but I don't. So it moves into a line called synthesis. Difficulties can be overcome when all the pertinent factors have been analyzed. In this rave, I remember the kind of the overall energy of Jupiter with these squares to the power centers are signing up for more than they can probably do and maybe regret it later. But now it's back to the thinking apparatus with Jupiter in the rave. And it goes to, well, maybe I should rethink this decision to get a second job. Or I'm not saying that you can't, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't sign up for more. Just that's the energy here. And it's going to cause you to go back to the dominant force of Sun and Mercury in a combust state. And this is back up. I forgot to talk about it. The Mercury combust. Mercury in a retrograde back to the Sun. We're looking at about a little bit more than a degree away from each other. And so this is a weakening mental state. And in Taurus, the Mercury wants to be really sure of things and really practical and really digging my heels in, maybe sometimes defensive and bullheaded, but now just in a really weakened mental state. And that's just going to cause us to really think even more about it. And the fear of being wrong goes up. So now we have a waxing gibbous Virgo moon. So now it's the opposite effect. Now we should be stepping on the accelerator for the goals that we've set for this lunar cycle, because this is the time right after the first quarter up to about the full moon. This is the big achievement week. And so, but unfortunately, Virgo is like second guesses and has a lot of details and may end up being a little bit perfectionistic in some of the earlier phases and then misses out on time later. So the tendency is to overthink. Your power centers are harder, so it takes longer to get things done. And now the moon is second guessing your work. So take all that into account and we'll get to the solution, but heads up, the solution is actually keep moving forward, but smaller steps, right? Monday, the 1st, we have three major alignments here. First, we've got Pluto station and retrograde in Aquarius. And so actually, we've talked about Pluto eventually going back into Capricorn for a few months and then going direct again, hitting Aquarius again. We'll do that dance on the cusp. So that's starting on May 1st. Welcome to May. The other big alignment is a T-square that I mentioned in the summary of Venus. And Venus with a T-square puts a lot of pressure on, relationships, but also maybe some financial strain, maybe trying to find that worth, with a hard aspect on Venus that sort of goes along with this Mercury. This is the Mercury Cazimi. All right, now I have the times here. This is 2:16 p.m. on May 1st, 2:16 to 10:47 p.m. That's when Mercury and the Sun are within 17 minutes of each other, both in azimuth and inclination. And so super future mind. We're saddled by Uranus and North Node in this. And it's a loose conjunction, but it's perfectly aligned right in the middle of Uranus and North Node is when this Cazimi happens. So it is very future oriented, big, super mind, and shows you practical things about what you can, anything that you want. You set your intention about a certain project, or maybe how to fix something, or even kind of invention, which is a future-oriented idea in the material world. It's bringing those concepts into something that you can actually use practically. So big solutions to mental apparatus with pressure and strain on relationships, and station retrograde for Pluto. So a lot of things happening on the first day of May. This relatively seems like a much lighter day, but keep in mind we have a tightening Jupiter and Mars square, and Jupiter and Pluto square is tightening. Yes, as well as tightening as well. So not a whole lot of changes there from Tuesday to Wednesday. And to be frank, most of the energy coming on this whole week, you're going to have a faint sense of here's your eclipse. And I'm not going to spend a lot of times on the eclipse because the May 5th is outside of our CIRF week, but that energy might be felt. And where most full moons are felt 20 plus or minus 24 hours of the event, these eclipses tend to be felt by more of the people more like a week out. And so we've got that obsessive feel to it. the Scorpio full moon, just fresh over the south node. So now the past is over here, and this unlocks those memories from the past where vengeance might come in. Those dark skeletons in the Scorpio closet might come out. Doesn't have to. Scorpio is really good for the deep passions and really going after what you really want and not letting anybody deter you from that. Mercury and Sun are still in a conjunction but combust, but a lightning load. So Mercury got its super mind, but then has since had to go back to being really confused and in a daze. And that's that kind of mystic feel with Jupiter, the wise mind, in a tightened square. So now only 3 degrees, 3 degrees and change, and 6 degrees in a square over to Mars. So both the power, and this is a long sort of double square in Aries. And Jupiter is that higher mind, higher tapping into the wisdom. And so there's this pressure to be there, chewing things over, finding the truth, thinking that you want to think that you know things and how things operate. So there's a pressure to know that. All right, we'll talk more about the lunar eclipse next time. Let's get into the I-Ching 56, the Wanderer. Inwardly, the Wanderer knows that something difficult Inwardly, the Wanderer knows that it is sometimes difficult to discern. Especially difficult to discern when Mercury is in a combust state. Increased caution and discernment becomes the keys not only to success, but to survival. So we are kind of forced in this energy to re-chew a very Taurus thing. Mercury in Taurus, Mercury combust in Taurus, in retrograde. And just keep on chewing on things and really opening your horizons and trying to see the whole picture, trying to see your blind spots. That's another way that Scorpio eclipse can help, is seeing your blind spots. Line 1, you are in a vulnerable position, as in any wanderer. Do not become involved in trivial matters that are not your concern. Now, there's two things, this is a match to two aspects. So the Jupiter double square, Jupiter is the wanderer. That's the direct to the planet correlation. But we also have this, the weakened mind for most of the week puts us into a mental wandering state, right? This is line 2. A warm and open attitude should be cultivated whenever you find yourself in a new environment. Much benefit will come from it. So a lot of us will resist this confusion, this mental state, and that will create behaviors that will create more problems. Escapism. Watch out for escapism this week. He may like where he has landed, but in his heart, he's still unsettled, for he has not yet arrived home. Feeling like you're not seen is becoming a common factor, especially with Venus T-square. But also feeling like you're not in the right body or in the right skin. You're kind of feeling not comfortable or content in your own self. Self-awareness, that's a possibility as well. Line 5 says, a time of success, promotion, and reward is indicated here. And that is absolutely true in a Taurus kind of sense. Taurus is value. So that's the seeking worth. And of course, our future is in Taurus. Here's our energy graph. And it's basically stays high. So we've got a lot of factors on this line. First, it's the eclipses on both sides, kind of sandwiched in between. Confusion, We also have the pressure of all those squares. And then we have the Taurus in that kind of confusion. And I want to call it a lull, but it's not a lull in terms of severity of energy. It's still high energy, but kind of a lull between these transition points of eclipses. But we're in Taurus, major focus on Taurus, so seeking value. And with the Mercury retrograde Cazimi in Taurus, it's about understanding. And the Cazimi means that we finally get a reprieve in that 12-hour period. Or what was it, 8 hours? I can't remember. You want me to go see? Let's see. Let's go back up to Mercury. And we got 2:16 to 10:47. So more like 8.5 hours of brilliant mind. And this is this little divot here in the energy. It's a break from all the energy. It's like suddenly everything makes sense. And so put yourself in those times. If you're outside of the central time zone, do the math to figure out exactly when your window is. And maximize your meditation time, maximize your introspection, quiet, give yourself a lot of mental space, especially with the Venus T-square this week, hard aspects to Venus. Be on that Cazimi, that Mercury Cazimi, like put yourself in a lot of space away from other people, particularly your close acquaintances, because you're going to get the most insight when you're alone and in your mind. You want to be in your head there. And check this out. Like, do some of you have negative thoughts and negative meanderings in a Mercury Cazimi? Check that out. But allow it to take place so that you can see where your mind wants to go. And I'm making this hypothesis that most of us, all of us, if we do this right, quiet our minds, be in a meditative position, kind of away from people in that Cazimi period, I bet you get some breakthroughs in your life, and it might be future oriented, most likely. All right. Let's summarize the influence for you so that we can move on to the solution. And I did. I had to push that line from the black and white line. I had to push this up this week so I had enough room for the solutions. The solution is pretty in-depth. We have confusion on which way to go. This is kind of the future. So we're wandering, we're meandering, we're seeking worth, Taurus, and it's kind of confusing. So here we go. Into the unknown we go. We are sandwiched between two eclipses with pressure on Jupiter and Venus. The future is unfolding in Taurus as we wander into uncharted collective territory with Mercury combust, meaning with a weak mind for most of the week. On Monday the 1st, Mercury Cazimi explodes into supermind with brilliant insight about value, worth, and wandering into the future towards your best experiences with an open mind. Expect energy to shift more towards financial unknowns and the rise of wisdom. Thank you, Jupiter. All right, so let's go back here and get our solution. We're transitioning to the solution now. So here we go. Behavioral. We're looking for behavioral components of hexagram 9. Focus on the little things. When you cannot do much to affect large matters, persuasion and subtle influence prepare the way for strong moves in the future. Use your intuition to chart your long-term course, but avoid bold actions. They are unlikely to work. This is a better time to refine existing abilities or to develop new talents. Gentleness combined with determination is likely to generate more progress than brute force ever could. And what's even better, it's a direct correlation to the Taurus energy. All right, as I mentioned before, the big influence here is Jupiter. And it's to do with all these squares and pressure onto the weakened states. And so this goes into a new rave. It's goes between 42 and 3, gate 3. So early in the week, the first part of the week, we're in increase 42 and nurturing. And then later, you can scroll up and you can see exactly when this happens. But then Jupiter goes into difficulty at the beginning. The fundamental challenge of initiation is to transcend confusion and establish order. This should sound familiar to you because we spent a few, this is where the eclipse was. Jupiter is entering into that same gate, but is now just in synthesis, line 1 of gate 3. Difficulties can be only overcome when all the pertinent factors have been analyzed. Voila! This is the focus of the whole week with Mercury combust. And then you'll get your answers. All that synthesis will happen when you get your answers in the Mercury Cazimi. So beautiful how all that works. Understanding that confusion is natural and must always exist before clarity can be achieved. An innate knowing that order will emerge from confusion. So, well, what do you think? Probably time to explore the solution slide, complete with new runes. All right, so we have the I-Ching, small influences. You've seen this before. No bold action, gentleness and determination. And then we have gate 3, synthesis. This is mental synthesis. And then we have Pisces. I didn't show that on the chart, but it's in sidereal Pisces. Okay. With a climax of unknowns, especially in the areas of finance, resources, and leadership, we have a direct overlap with the first quarter moon. It's a time to move forward slowly and deliberately, which is also a match to Taurus and the overall Taurus energy, but not with huge leaps nor big power plays. The emphasis in the rave is mental analysis and synthesis. Instead of focusing on how confusing everything is, concern yourself with broadening your worldview, getting more information, chewing things over and over, and verbalize and trust in the concept that order will eventually emerge. Okay. With sidereal Pisces, be sure to continue your spiritual practice and attune to your intuition. Use psychic awareness and intuitive knowing alongside the mental synthesis you'll obtain with the Mercury Cazimi and the Jupiter aspects. The underlying eclipse cycle is bringing out your inner warrior, either by your willful choice or by cosmic catalyst. And what I mean by that is, so 2 possible cosmic catalysts would be maybe like a predetermined or pre-agreed karmic event that you practiced and agreed to before you came into this life. That might be happening this 6-month period. Or maybe you are ego strong and veering off of your soul path. And so a catalyst needs to come in and get you back on that path. Those are your 2 options. But if you have that full awareness, then you don't need the catalyst. Okay? And so a lot of you, I know Angie has, a lot of you have had your catalyst. And what is it for? In this period, it's about waking the inner warrior in this 6 months period. So you can do that by your willful choice. You have to do it in accordance with soul, though, not ego. And you have to use intuition. Okay? Especially the Mercury Cazimi will help. Be compassionate towards people. This is continuation of sidereal Pisces. Be compassionate towards people, choosing their catalyst and their route to bringing the warrior out. Catalyst brings forth the warrior. That's the whole point. Now, that's not necessarily just this week. That's the grander scale of our 6-month period. And that's where we're all headed in this Aries eclipse cycle. But for specific to this week is broadening your perspectives, synthesizing mental aspects, mental truth, getting your mind wrapped around more so that you reduce your blind spots in your mind. And I mindfully take right action. I'm reading these. I broaden my perspectives and easily synthesize truth. I mindfully take right action. That slows things down. And don't just take it for granted that your subconscious can just do all this work. Really pay attention to the small tasks, like how you're brushing your teeth, how you're taking your walk, how much social media you're consuming. Just be mindful about all that, non-judgmental. All right, so in the runes, so what I'm going to do, I've got a rune for the week. The dominant one is Azus. Let me see if I pronounced it. Anzus. Anzus. And this one is about wisdom, discernment in a complex situation, i.e. confusion, enhance magical workings, success in dialogue or public speaking, success in examinations, inspiration, and divine connection. That is our wandering into the mystic. All right, so I'm going to put that on top of my runes, and the one underneath is the inner warrior, the Aries equivalent of Tiwaz. That's the arrow up, and that's bringing out the inner warrior. Its uses for success, victory in competitions, strengthen willpower, courage, healthy masculine energy, and strengthen spiritual faith. So you see why it's into the mystic now. It's both the 1 week cycle and the 6-month cycle are about getting to deeper and broadened states of perspectives and mind, while you bring forth your best, strongest inner warrior over the course of the next 6 months. All right, can't think of anything else. Probably missed a bunch, but put your comments below and have a blessed week. Namaste.